And then also we're going to be switching to our next panel. This one is going to be about the role of NFT fashion, the role of NFTs in fashion. We'll go ahead and get them on stage.
Hi, we're here at NFTCON to discuss digital fashion, and I'm here with Kerry Murphy and Emma Jane. I'm not going to go at that last name there. So we're going to talk about digital fashion. And Kerry, how about a quick summary of how long you've been in the industry and what type of work you've been doing?
So we've been operating as the Fabricant since 2018, but the actual technical development started out in 2016 already, when I realized that fashion was completely not digital, and having seen every other industry, especially design industries, film industry, architecture, automotive, everything gone fully digital. So it was quite obvious what was going to happen with fashion as well. So we started operating as the Fabricant in 2018. Truly focusing on the fashion industry itself, because we did not realize how could we actually monetize digital only clothing back in 2018. And then in 2019 we were able to sell a digital only dress on the blockchain for 54 ETH. Back then it was $9,500. And then with the emergence of the pandemic, I think a lot of the industries and people realized that our lives were going very virtual, and people started seeing more value in the digital only clothing. And now we're really focusing on building our own platform, which is a digital-only fashion platform, essentially making everybody a digital fashion designer. So that's what we're doing in a very condensed, nutshell version,
I should say. And Emma Jane, tell us about DIGITALAX. DIGITALAX.
It's a bit hard to pronounce, DIGITALAX, yeah. But yeah, mod it there everywhere you want. So DIGITALAX, I started, it was almost probably 1 year ago from today, kind of, October. So it's a Web3 fashion platform protocol built on Ethereum and Polygon network. And how do I explain it? Well, a different way every time, and it's always kind of changing and new things are going on. But the best way is that it's all about allowing or providing fashion designers with tools, mediums, materials to be able to create and design in Web3. So purely kind of native to the blockchain, decentralization, open source, these really important principles. And then also allow buyers and collectors to collect and wear Web3 fashion. And again, really with the ideas of decentralization, open source, and that being incredibly important to everything that we're building out.
Yes, fascinating site. I've taken a look through it. Okay, so let's talk some general ideas on the need for digital clothing. I mean, I have a good idea of it, but Kerry, would you like to tell us?
Sure. I mean, there's multiple different perspectives on it, and everybody has a different need. Not everybody, of course, is leading a very digital life, and fashion brands and fashionistas have a completely different use than, let's say, gamers and crypto native people. But looking at it truly from the fashion industry angle, the fashion industry itself needs digitization simply because of the environmental toxicity of the industry itself. There's a lot of work to be done in connecting the supply chains, but also just changing the sampling process into a fully digital one. Lookbooks and websites can be populated with fully 3D rendered images these days, and you won't need any physical clothing, really pushing the fashion industry towards a production on demand model, meaning produce only what gets sold. But right now there's a massive challenge when it comes to overstock, when it comes to dead stock, a lot of landfills full of clothing. I think the best documentary highlighting, let's say, the challenges that the fashion industry has is called True Cost, and it's from 2015. My mom just watched it a month ago, and she was like, "Oh my God, I'm never buying real clothing again firsthand." So it is highlighting the problem quite a lot. But then I just really love what's happening, especially in the crypto industry, where this idea of ownership around digital assets, and people can own digital clothing. A challenge that we're facing with digital clothing for purchasers right now is to give them utility. So if you buy a digital clothing, like how do we take it beyond the collectible aspect? How do we give it utility? And the utilities that I speak about, making AR wearables, playing them in games, NFT games, and how do we make it easily shareable on social media? So those are like the three different aspects that we're really focusing on. But if you look at the gaming industry, they've been doing this for 20 years already. People have been buying so-called skins for a lot of money for many, many years already. So the gaming industry is probably the most native when it comes to digital fashion. However, if you ask a fashion designer or a true fashionista if these games are fashionable, they'll say no, because it's simply quite informative or functional clothing. And with the Fabricant, we've always been focused on how do we make these digital assets actually fashionable? How do we bring that emotional resonation or that emotional connection that people have with clothing in the physical world? How do we actually bring it into our virtual existence to create our virtual identities?
Yes, Richard Hobbs said that the blockchain ownership of digital assets means that they can actually be wearable eventually across multiple platforms. Now, Emma Jane, you have a lot of studying of blockchain, I heard, in terms of it really being something that you paid a lot of attention to firstly. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because even when we think about, these terms of like NFTs in the metaverse, just 12 months ago, when people were talking about them, they were considered, okay, that's a really far off reality, or that's something incredibly abstract and high level. And now it's in everybody's vocabulary. If you're not, frankly, talking about NFTs or the metaverse, or you don't have that within whatever you're building, and at least really considering how that's completely changing the very fabric of everything that we're existing on right now, then it's kind of like that Twitter meme of, well, you're not going to make it. So myself, my background isn't in the fashion industry. It's very much more in Web3 and blockchain. I studied space engineering, and then I dropped out to go into Web3 full time, and that was a few years ago. And really the kind of just inspiration and motivation for me to do that was just understanding how important agency, freedom, ownership is, self-sovereignty in everyone's lives. If you cannot have that, then it makes everything incredibly difficult. And not just that, but you have a very clear ceiling. And that's really what we've seen with Web 2. It's been Web 2 for the past 20 years, even more so, where there's always been a centralized gatekeeper. There's always been kind of this extractive model where these larger players, they've come in, and we see this very much so in the fashion industry, and they control these choke points. And then if you aren't at the top of that model, then you're kind of having to bow down. And it's not a really great model to be in at all. In fact, it's, really caused so much destruction. If we think about, Kerry, what you were saying, with that documentary, so like, why is the fashion industry like this? Well, if we go back to the root of it, why is it unsustainable? It's because of the way that it's set up. It's because of that extractive nature and just very kind of raw way of instead of coming in and saying, hey, how do we be generative, circulative, lucrative, let's be exploitative in everything that is actually kind of put out. And you see that across every part of the supply chain in the fashion industry, and you also see that in the way that designers are brought in and the way that they feel about it. I don't think that any designer in Web 2 can really say that they feel that the fashion industry is a supportive environment, or one that they can have creative power, have productive capacity, have agency. But Web3, it spins that completely on its head, because now you have this really important feature of ownership. So everything that you are doing, ultimately you own. And that changes the game, because now you do have agency, you have self-sovereignty, you have so much creative power over everything that you're putting out. So
and that is the key, is that you do own it. And before that, it was just something that you could go and look at. One thing I want to clarify with the fashion industry is it was 2018 in the stock market crash that basically ended up mucking up, besides all the other sort of criminal things within, but that really ended up mucking up the fashion cycles, because that's when they started getting a whole bunch of clothing that wasn't sold. And then what happened is people started expecting the bargains. And then what happened is they started getting the actual seasonal stuff in, such as Christmas in summer. So again, in theory, the industry was starting to sort of self-correct and trying to work its way into digital. And then COVID came, and now everybody does have to go digital. There was just a few companies touching sort of virtual garments firstly, and then making to order. But now it's becoming so that every company needs that type of team in its company. And the communication too with the foreign factories, because now if it's done digitally, everybody is working off the same pattern versus working off a sketch or sample. But so I wanted to ask, where is everybody getting their avatars from? Is everybody working from DAS to actually start building their garments on?
Who's everybody? Like 3D
Okay,
designers?
Kerry, where do you get your avatars?
I mean, but we're 3D designers, so we know how to use software. So we call ourselves software agnostic. But DAS is a great resource for making avatars, absolutely. But it's not the only resource. You can also 3D scan people. You can also use 3D modeling techniques. So there's multiple different ways of doing an avatar. But if you're gonna ask like, where do I get my personal avatars from? Well, first of all, I got myself 3D scanned, so I have a 3D scan version of myself. And then anywhere where I play games, Cyberpunk 2077 is a great avatar configurator there. I love just playing with that avatar configurator for like 20 minutes, just creating a fantastic avatar for the game. Any games, of course, Genies. I'm really looking forward to what Genies is going to release with their platform. And then there's, of course, Wolf 3D, Didimo, and Soul Machines. I think they're really under the radar right now, but Soul Machines is probably one of the biggest forefront when it comes down to making artificial intelligence avatars. I think their focus is somewhere else than consumer space, but let's see what's going to come out from them. And yeah, multiple other companies. I think there must be like hundreds of companies trying to figure out on how to create a scalable avatar system that people actually want to use. And
Yes,
I think that's the challenge. It's like, you know, how do we create avatars that people will actually really connect to and be like, wow, that's a true virtual representation of myself, whether it's a photorealistic one or not a photorealistic one or both. It doesn't really matter. It's just we just need to get that avatar experience where everybody was like, okay, that's the avatar that I really want to play with in the metaverse.
Yes, definitely.
I'll add a little bit to that as well, because there's been so much within the NFT industry around this very specific topic of profile photos or avatars. And it's been really interesting to see kind of the migration where people actually aren't, they kind of are definitely, but at the same time, it's not just thinking of an avatar as having to be a completely 3D immersive model, but even something like your Twitter profile photo. That's kind of very representative online and in social media of how do you want to be seen? How do you actually want to self-express? And there's been a huge kind of trend and fad, even a little bit, with 10,000 like kind of profile photo collections. Doesn't have to be 10,000. It can be kind of another amount. But whatever the case, these collections of profile photos that are sold as NFTs. And when people buy in, they're getting a unique version of a broader theme or variety. I'm sure you might have heard of Bored Ape Yacht Club or even CryptoPunks. It's kind of a really OG one. But I think that a core point here, it is kind of like the utility now. How do you bridge a lot of utility? So when people, or you're buying or you're dressing yourselves in these avatars or these kind of online digital representations, how do you actually draw those connections? Because right now we can't take everything fully immersive. And it's not like you can just go cross-platform into these massive multiplayer online worlds. You do have those limitations. And so instead of these games really being the ones where we're being immersed in it, it's kind of like these 2D environments, these very Web 2 interfaces like Twitter for social media that where most of us kind of live on. So Twitter's been a really big one where quote unquote avatars have really taken over. And I think they're even like going to be verifying NFTs now. So that would be interesting to see where that goes.
What's your Twitter profile, Imogen?
Mine is mine's actually one that was personally drawn for me by Kodomadachi, and she is a very kind of keen modder in the gaming space, but it kind of looks exactly like me. Like, she did a really, really good job. She took a real world photo, IRL photo, and then just copied that. So yeah, it's like a special one, I would say. And she worked with us, and she's part of our Global Designer Network DAO, but she worked with us back in February when we did the Among Us kind of esports NFT drop. So yeah.
Cool. Is that an NFT, or is it just a
No, it's not, it's just what about yours, Kerry? Is yours an NFT or?
I have an NFT which is just a garment. It's a digital garment right now. Yeah,
wow.
just to go, because everybody has like all these like animals or like different type of, from those 10K projects. I was like, okay, I'm just going to put a digital fashion garment there, because I had that World of Women one, but then because my World of Women NFT is a woman of color. So I thought, okay, maybe it's a little bit weird if a white male puts an illustration of a woman of color as a Twitter profile picture. So I took it out like after I had that kind of realization.
Yeah, no, I do think there needs to be somewhat similar, definitely.
But
so
I just want to add to that one thing here. It's interesting though that you say that, because like that's the reality that we're moving into though, is that you won't know like who the person is behind it at all. They can be completely different than how they're representing themselves online. They have like kind of a separate digital representation that is even verified by the blockchain. So it's crazy to think, but that's literally kind of the very like fabric of the reality that we're moving into. So
we've had that on the internet before, before any type of pictures. You just didn't know what you were meeting.
Can I draw another example? In our organization, we have a 3D artist, and he's really good with MetaHumans. MetaHumans is this avatar creator from Epic Games, and he started coming into our meetings as a Black African man into the meetings, but he's a East European white male, and it caused quite a commotion internally, because first of all, some people didn't know, like, hey, who's this person, because the avatar looks quite real, and if you have like 20 people in a call, the avatar face is quite small, so everybody's kind of like, hey, who's this new person in the call? They didn't realize that it was a 3D avatar of him, and then it kind of started this whole conversation internally. Yeah, what does it mean, like the person behind the profile picture, or the person behind the virtual identity, like what are the ethical rules that even go to that? Like they're quite undefined at the moment, and everybody's going to have a different opinion about it too. So it's like there's no, let's say, universal rule with that, but it's interesting topic to debate.
Yeah, it will define itself, definitely. Now, I want to talk just briefly about brands and the fact that you're, Emma Jane, selling. You're a digital platform yourself, but the advertising, the Coca-Cola jacket just totally inspired me in a way that just the other sort of digital art didn't. Does anybody have any comments on that?
To be honest, I didn't really follow it. I don't know too much about the Coca-Cola drop. I know they did something in Decentraland, I think, but the details, I have no idea. I think it's interesting, though, this idea of kind of brands in the blockchain. I know that it gets asked a lot in the digital fashion space, or just like Web3 fashion space in general, is, can brands exist within kind of NFTs and crypto, when a lot of it is about inspiring kind of more independent and peer-to-peer connections? And my response to that is always, yes, anything can exist within this new Web3 world, because the best way to think about it is a new 4D internet. It's really not just, blockchain or NFTs being their own separate component, but it's a tool and a medium that right now is very raw to the interface, but it would be not abstracted away the really importance of the decentralization layers, but definitely the interface that we're using it now. In a few years, it will be very completely different, and NFTs will underwrite so much, or even all, of our digital content by then. And so when people kind of talk about, okay, brands coming into the blockchain and how do they navigate that, or what does that mean? And I know, Kerry, you have thoughts here as well. I find it really interesting because my big mantra things, and very much with DIGITALAX, it's about how do you really inspire an independent designer to be able to come and exist in this market, and not just independent designers, but independent studios, creators as well. Because that was something that, or it is something within the Web2 fashion industry that is very, very difficult. If you are a young or independent designer, you can't really just come in and have the tools, materials, and mediums, resources as well to get off the ground and make your way into the market. But the whole point of NFTs is having that as a very kind of direct and raw, like direct to market, really. You just go and you ship, and you have kind of your whole customer base there tomorrow. And it's something I love about Web3. So with these bigger brands coming in, I do think, again, I don't know the specifics of the Coca-Cola drop, but I do think that the ones that I have seen, it's been very much, they've been playing a Web2 game where they don't really understand how everything's changing around them, and how the very nature of the blockchain, their current model doesn't actually exist within Web3. It can't exist within Web3.
Let me address that from the fashion industry again. So I am teaching Clo 3D at Motif, and I have done 3 lessons. And one of the advanced Clo is actually dealing specifically with creating digital doubles for the fashion industry. In other words, they want something that looks like the real garment so that they can show it to buyers. And I had one company approach me, and they wanted 600 samples per year to deal with a large American store. So in many ways, it is happening, although not, as I say, as a digital asset yet, other than internally and for sales. The reason I was so thrilled with the Coca-Cola is it was so beautiful, or at least I thought it was. I love the drops of water. And that takes me to the whole Meta Gala and the dress you did, Kerry. I thought that was beautiful. I thought the whole surrounding was gorgeous. And I love the fact that your dress transformed. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. I mean, it's a very different story from the Coca-Cola story.
Oh, of course. No. We're talking about more beauty in fashion now.
And I just want to echo Emma Chain as well on everything that you said. The true power of Web3 is really catering more for the underprivileged rather than the current power structures. And that's what we're focusing on as well. And that's what the Meta Gala is there for too. So if we really compare the Meta Gala to the Met Gala, the Met Gala is really catered for only the few privileged people who are super celebrities or super rich. And then somehow we as society get a kick out of looking at the Met Gala and be like, oh, look at those funny dresses, and look at these rich people having fun at the Met Gala, and we're just observing it from the sidelines. Now, the whole idea with the Meta Gala is that everybody gets to take part, and it's really going against the Met Gala and trying to invite everybody to think about how could we actually change that around, and how do we make it inclusive and accessible rather than exclusive and inaccessible. And I think that's the true power of the Web3 world as well. It's like it's an invitation for everybody. And I'm not saying that there's no privilege. There is definitely privilege involved, because you need to have some type of device that's connected to the Wi-Fi still, and not everybody in the world has that. But that's a different issue. But we're really focused on, again, that inclusivity side, same as Emma Chain, really just giving a voice to the people who didn't have that previously. And I don't want to take the credit for the Meta Gala, because it's an undertaking that's much larger than the Fabricant itself. This is like multiple different people coming together to come up with that idea and concept and building this beautiful environment. And there's a lot of people taking part in it too, like fashion designers, avatar designers, and multiple different companies who are really putting a lot of effort into it and really just organizing around the Met Gala to create something new. We as the Fabricant, we just happened to design something in collaboration with Ruby Gloom. Ruby was the model, the avatar for our dress, and then we designed the dress for it. And again, always with this idea of like, how do we design with value in mind? And what's the true value of digital fashion? Is to design fashion that can't exist in real life, to create a new narrative, to create a new visual aesthetic. That's always what we're going by. And even though the Meta Gala was a nice, I think, 2-minute show, the potential is much larger. And of course, we want to push that vision and really invite everybody next year to take part.
Yes,
you know, like how do we make it like the Travis Scott experience? That was a concert for, you know, more than 12 million people taking part. You know, like that everybody can come there and take part and be a participant in one way or another. I think that's the true power of what's happening right now. So yeah, this is an invitation to make the Meta Gala the biggest digital fashion catwalk event in the world, but in 1 year.
I think that's the thing for me is again, the creativity of being able to create in 3D always captures me. and of course, you're giving, Emma Jane, you're giving the opportunity to sell these garments as well, or to acquire them, or at least a place for the artists to show them. Is that not true?
Yeah, no, it is true. That's how we really kind of spawned or started things off, was as a NFT marketplace. And it was empowering independent designers to come and create really awesome 3D garments, and then auction or sell these off on our marketplace. And since then, we've expanded to not just, you know, digital 3D couture, indie digital fashion as NFTs, but also we have a physical NFT marketplace for physical fashion, and then also kind of hybrid digital physical as well. So yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So any recommendations for talent that want to produce NFT clothing?
Yeah, definitely. I would say join the Global Designer Network, which is the very first Web3 fashion DAO that we started a few months back. And that has hundreds of designers from all over the globe that have joined, and they are at all different levels of skill, from literally just starting 3D or wanting to learn about it to being in the industry for a number of years. And the community that's being created, it's really at the ground level, all about growing connections, strengthening connections between different designers, and going out there and trying crazy new things. Like, we did a project a few weeks ago, and for everyone listening in, I know probably everyone's heard of the Loot project, which was a massive one in NFTs, and it was all about composability. And composability is a really important part of Web3 fashion as well, is how do you kind of break a master garment into its multiple components to then introduce different royalty models, different
okay, we're running out of time.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have to go look it up. Kerry, any quick notes on this one?
No, also similar. I love this whole idea of collaboration and co-creation, and I think that's the new world as well.
Yeah.
I urge everybody to go to type in digital.fashion in their browser and take the pledge, because then by taking that pledge, people get to take part in what we call season 1. And that's really catered for people who don't necessarily have previous fashion design experience, but really want to be fashionable in the metaverse. So we're launching season 1 in November. So everybody can basically create digital fashion and wear it in their metaverse existence.
Yes. Okay. And I think I will conclude by saying, touch a 3D software program. Clo is a totally reasonable subscription. It gets you in there. It starts to give you an idea of how the basic body can be dressed. There's tons of free online. You could take a look at my lessons if you want to pay a little to learn a lot. And then, of course, there's other softwares like DAZ. And again, once you start using it, it's just like a paintbrush. Once you know what to do with it, you can paint. So again, I think we've shown you that there is an amazing world of fashion already existing as NFTs, and giving you some ideas of what you can research further in terms of NFTs. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Thank you.